First at 9 this Wednesday, the 10th of July 2024. To be continued. JICA to provide 170 billion rupee concessional loan scheme to reduce the construction of the second terminal at the Katunayake International Airport. Backtracked. Government to repeal Strategic Development Projects Act. Derailed. 80% of railway journeys disrupted by strikes, striking railway workers to be considered as having vacated their positions. Housing drive. Government to create new villages for estate workers.
This is Ada Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Ada Derana. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now your top story this evening, the Japan International Cooperation Agency agrees to resume funding for the terminal of the Bandaranaike International Airport's extension project facilitated under a concessionary loan scheme. According to the Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, Nimal Siripala de Silva, JICA will provide 170 billion rupees for the upcoming construction works under the relief loan program.
In the aftermath of Sri Lanka's grueling economic crisis, Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva revealed in Parliament that 12 projects funded by Japan under the Japan International Cooperation Agency were suspended until the International Monetary Fund established a roadmap on Sri Lanka's debt and its sustainability. The projects were suspended by JICA over concerns pertaining to Sri Lanka's inability to service its debt obligations. The minister added that one of the 12 projects suspended was the construction of the second terminal of the Bandaranaike International Airport under a loan amounting to $570 million. However, JICA assured the Sri Lankan government that the funding would resume once Sri Lanka concluded restructuring its external debt. 2 years later, in June this year, Sri Lanka concluded its external debt restructuring with the official creditor committee, including Japan, India and France, agreeing to restructure $5.8 billion of debt, while agreements were signed with the Exim Bank of China to restructure $4.5 billion of debt. Against this backdrop, a special discussion between the representatives of JICA, including its Chief Representative of Sri Lanka Office, Tetsuya Yamada, and Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva was held today at the ministry premises. During the meeting, JICA agreed to re-grant the concessional loan scheme to resume the construction of the second terminal at Katunayake International Airport. The subject minister added that JICA will provide 170 billion rupees for the upcoming construction works under the relief loan program. JICA representatives assured the minister that the related loan agreements would be signed soon. The Ports and Aviation Ministry added that calls for bids for the construction works would be made by September this year. The minister also emphasized that the new terminal, which will feature modern technology and facilities, will significantly increase the number of air passengers from the current volume of 6 million to 16 million a year.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Now, State Minister of Finance Srihan Semasinghe says that the Strategic Development Projects Act will be repealed and that the government will present a set of rules necessary to repeal the act within the next few months. He made those comments while speaking in Parliament today.
ආර්ථික වර්ධනය ඇත්තටම ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියන්න නම් අපි මොකද්ද කරන්න ඕනේ දේශීය ආර්ථිකය උත්තේජනයක් ලබා දෙන්න ඕනේ.
We have to boost the national economy in order to increase economic growth. Necessary measures have to be taken to provide that boost. Instead of doing that, the measures taken by the government are contracting the national economy. If we consider the small and medium scale enterprises and the local exporters, they are affected by electricity tariff hikes, increased fuel and raw material costs and increased taxes. However, the government has failed to provide tax relief for them. We are providing tax relief to a select set of foreign investors. How can we give a boost to the national economy without providing necessary relief to small and medium scale enterprises? The Finance Ministry says that the Treasury lost 954 billion rupees due to the tax relief provided to strategic development projects. projects. Some parliamentarians and ministers have announced in their respective electorates that the government is providing a concessionary loan of 1 million rupees. So far, it has been granted to a select group of people. I want to know whether there is a political agenda behind it, because providing finance to small and medium-scale enterprises that were affected by the crisis is crucial.
ආර්ථික බලපෑමෙන් යම් පසුබෑම් වලට ලක් වෙච්ච අයට මේ ණය ලබා දීම වැදගත් කියන එක මේ අවස්ථාවේදී විශේෂයෙන්ම මතක් කරන්න කැමතියි.
මේ වෙනකොට විශේෂයෙන්ම තරුණ ව්‍යවසායකත්වයේ ප්‍රවර්ධනය කිරීම සඳහා
A concessionary loan scheme through State Bank is currently being implemented in order to promote entrepreneurship among the youth. You mentioned the name of a certain bank that has failed to provide relief on interest rates. That is what you have heard. The Ministry of Finance also receives such complaints. We are not aware of what has actually happened within the bank. However, the central bank intervened and restructured some of the bank loans. Further, the restructured loans were restructured again twice or thrice. Unfortunately, they have failed to follow the procedure. You claim that we do not hear the grief of the public. We can hear it very well. However, none of you see the work we do. Both sides should take responsibility and develop the country. I know that both Harsha De Silva and you want to support the ongoing program with the IMF. However, the opposition leader is not letting all of you to support the program.
Why has the government failed to abolish the Strategic Development Projects Act? Even the IMF recommended abolishing it.
While working with the IMF, they recommended that we abolish the law. We already consider it to be abolished. Since November last year, Sri Lanka has not received a strategic development project. There was a situation where businesses that would be investing in the Eravur zone were subjected to relief entitled for SDB projects. Previously, relief was provided for all SDB projects. However, due to the conditions of the IMF, we have ensured that relief will only be provided to businesses investing within the zone. The relevant gazette was issued today.
Correction එකක් කරලා තියෙනවා. වෙන මොකුත් අලුතෙන් කරලා නැහැ. ඔබතුමා මතු කරපු කාරණේම STP strategic development projects වලට
Both of our camps have criticized the Strategic Development Project Act for providing tax relief lacking equality whenever we were in the opposition. Our country lacked a proper mechanism because the procedure changed from one government to the next. As the State Minister of Investment Promotion said, we will repeal the STP Act. We are not using it. We are taking necessary measures by considering it to be repealed. We will present a set of rules necessary to repeal this act within the next few months.
repeal වෙන්න අවශ්‍ය rule base එකක් අපි ඉදිරි මාස කිහිපය තුළ ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා.
Horizon Campus 2024 intake. Register now.
Now, the Sri Lankan government has decided to introduce new laws to amalgamate estate houses and line rooms in estate areas to create villages for residents. Meanwhile, a decision has been taken to fast-track license cancellations of regional plantation companies that have failed to pay the increased wages for the estate workers. With that, let's review the cabinet decisions taken during the week.
During this week's cabinet meeting, it was decided to appoint a project committee to evaluate investment proposals from the private sector regarding green hydrogen and to submit recommendations to the Cabinet of Ministers. This decision was made based on the country's significant potential to emerge as a green energy producer, exporter and zonal energy hub. It has also been forecast that the demand for commercial green ammonia will increase to billions of tons by 2030. In another decision, the Cabinet of Ministers approved a proposal to allocate 202 million rupees from the National Transport Commission's fund to commence 500 new Cesarean services in 2024. The Cabinet statement noted that this decision was prompted by demands from economically disadvantaged parents and students who lack private transport options due to rising fuel prices. Meanwhile, Tata Sons Private Limited has agreed to provide 50 ambulances as a grant, while the Asian Development Bank has committed to providing 45 ambulances as a grant to the 1990 Cesarean Foundation. Consequently, the Cabinet of Ministers has approved to take necessary measures to obtain these ambulances for the ambulance service. Meanwhile, in another decision, 13 firms have been designated as secondary businesses of strategic importance under the provisions of the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act, granting them exceptions and incentives specified in Schedule 2 of the Act. Additionally, it has been decided to introduce a new law amalgamating estate houses and line rooms in estate areas to create villages for residents. This decision aims to address the lack of rural-level services provided by state institutions in estate areas. The legal draftsman has been instructed to formulate a draft bill for this purpose. Furthermore, it has been decided to expedite the process of enacting laws to cancel land lease agreements between regional plantation companies and the government due to their failure to pay the salaries announced earlier this year. The cancellation of these agreements will be based on recommendations from the committee appointed by the Cabinet last month. During today's Cabinet decision briefing, Cabinet spokesman Dr. Bandula Gunawardana announced that yesterday's meeting resulted in a decision to amend the constitution, clearly specifying the president's term in office as 5 years, aimed at preventing any confusion.
Yesterday, a cabinet paper was presented regarding this matter. Elaborating on the matter, the Minister of Justice suggested amending the constitution to clearly specify the president's term in office as 5 years to prevent manipulation stemming from different opinions. This decision has been finalized by the president and the cabinet of ministers.
Now, since railway services have been declared to be essential services, Sri Lanka Railways has warned that railway workers who fail to report to duty will be considered as having vacated their positions. The statement came against a backdrop where railway strikes, which commenced midnight yesterday, continued undeterred today, causing extreme discomfort to passengers.
The Sri Lanka Railway Station Masters Union launched a strike action from midnight yesterday over several demands. As a result, several trains including the night mails to and from Fort, Badulla, Trincomalee, Batticaloa and Ramukana were cancelled, massively inconveniencing the public. Sri Lanka Railways warned the striking station masters and railway controllers that if they fail to report to duty, they will be considered as having vacated their positions, since public transport including Sri Lanka's railway service has been listed as an essential service. Despite the announcements made by Sri Lanka Railways, the train strike continued this morning. Several train trips were cancelled while limited train services remained operational. General Manager of Sri Lanka Railways S.S. Mudalige revealed that 80% of train services were disrupted this morning due to the train strike. Additionally, the Ministry of Transport and Highways stated that necessary steps were taken to provide free transport on SLTB buses for the passengers who have obtained train season tickets. As the strike proceeds undeterred, Sri Lanka Railways issued their final warning, informing that all striking railway service employees who fail to report to duty by 12 noon today will be considered to have vacated their positions. However, the striking railway workers remain determined to continue the strike action. In the meantime, the customs trade unions initiated a work to rule campaign recently over the amendments which are to be brought to the customs ordinance. The unions alleged that there is a plan to merge Sri Lanka Customs, the Inland Revenue Department and the Excise Department and hand over their powers to a private entity. In the wake of the ongoing strike campaigns, the container transport associations pointed out that 3,000 to 4,000 containers are currently held up at the Colombo port. They further revealed that against such a backdrop, it is possible for the haulage charges to be raised by 10%. The customs trade unions, however, added that the container clearance will revert to normalcy within a span of a week.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe says that the change within the country will not be achieved through slogans, protests or petitions. Speaking at an event at the Presidential Secretariat, the head of state added that those who wish to bring about change must be prepared to dedicate themselves in order to bring their goals to fruition.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday presided over the inauguration of the Randar Urume program, which aims to grant full ownership of 250,000 state-owned apartments in Colombo to their residents. In the first phase of the program, a total of 50,000 houses will be provided to low-income families. During the event, the President symbolically awarded the ownership of 130 houses located in 31 apartment complexes in the Colombo district.
When my residence was set ablaze 2 years ago, I realized the true value of a home. That is why we initiated the Urume program, which will provide homes for 2 million people in rural areas, as well as 250,000 residents of Colombo. As a government, we are determined to provide as many concessions as possible to the people of this country. All of us know about the hardship you had to endure. When I accepted the responsibility of leading the country, we collectively determined to bring about a change in the country. This change will not be achieved through slogans, protests or petitions. If you have a goal, you must be prepared to take actions to bring it to fruition. First, we granted a 10,000 rupee salary increments to government employees. That might not have been enough, but it provided some relief. Following discussions with the IMF, we reached agreements with our creditors, from which we received $8 billion worth of relief on our outstanding debts. Further debt repayment have been postponed to 2042. We should not accumulate any more debts going forward. We must create an export-oriented economy that generates revenue. We must not allow anyone to distract us from those two goals.
Now, in a rather startling discovery, it was revealed during the most recent sitting of the Committee on Public Finances that the land upon which the parliamentary complex is situated is not owned by the Parliament but by the Urban Development Authority. Questions were also raised about a number of lands in Colombo owned by the Urban Development Authority, which have been leased out at rates far below market value. There are severe issues in the accounting records of the Urban Development Authority. There are some properties that are listed as investments but cannot be considered as such. For example, the land on which the parliamentary complex is situated is recorded as being leased out for 3.9 billion rupees. Is the parliament actually situated on leased land?
The Urban Development Authority acquired several lands in the Battaramul area together during the 1980s. During that acquisition, the land upon which the parliament is located was also taken over by the UDA. Therefore, the land on which the parliament is situated is owned by the UDA.
Parliament land cannot be owned by the UDA. The ownership of the land must be transferred to Parliament.
Additionally, we have seen that the UDA has leased a plot of land in Narahimpita for 1,632 rupees. Another plot of land has been leased to the Ceylon Oil for 280,902 rupees. It is impossible to find even a perch of land in Colombo for 280,000 rupees. Lands have been leased to Apollo Hospital for 18,425 rupees.
We base the value of each lease on the valuation assessed by the chief valuer whenever we lease out a plot of land. If a land is leased out for 99 years, the total value of that particular lease for the full 99 years will be collected up front. Apart from that, we collect an annual ground rental fee.
How is that value determined? I find it hard to believe that the ground rental fee for a plot of land in an area such as Narahimpita is only 100 rupees.
The chief valuer's valuation depends on the conditions that we outline. We will check the relevant file and inform the committee on the directives under which the land in question was leased to Apollo Hospitals within 48 hours.
Star dishwasher Dali Hell Indul Pahasuwen Sede. Star dishwasher magic tub එක.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Welcome back. Now in your business news, State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siambalapitiya says that a report on the relaxation of the import ban imposed on vehicles is expected to be submitted to the Cabinet of Ministers by the second week of July, rather August. Speaking in Parliament today, he went on to reveal that the ban on vehicle imports will be lifted methodically upon approval from the Cabinet of Ministers.
Many ask us when the ban on other vehicles will be lifted. We have already allowed the importation of 1,000 vehicles for the tourism industry. A report prepared by the special committee pertaining to the importing of vehicles has been submitted to the Minister of Finance. We are now deliberating on the practical aspects of the ban's removal. There are numerous stakeholders, including the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry of Industries, the Sri Lanka Automobile Assemblers Association, as well as importers of brand new and used vehicles who are impacted by the lifting of the ban. Therefore, we appointed a committee comprising representatives from all those organizations. The committee was appointed to formulate a plan on importing vehicles that would reap the maximum benefit and cause the minimum amount of damage possible to all local stakeholders. We have informed the International Monetary Fund of our plan to import vehicles after August this year. According to the plan, vehicles belonging to a few categories will be imported imported, subject to a particular order of preference. Those categories include vehicles used for public transport, vehicles used as alternatives to public transport, normal vehicles and luxury vehicles. They will be imported in that particular order. The committee tasked with formulating the plan convened on the 4th of July. The committee expects to submit a report to the Cabinet of Ministers by the second week of August. We will be able to methodically implement this program upon the approval of the Cabinet.
කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය අනුමැතිය ලැබුවාම අපිට පුළුවන් යම්කිසි ක්‍රමානුකූල ක්‍රමවේදයකට මේ කාරණාව ඉෂ්ට කරන්න ගරු සභාපතිතුමනි.
Mission Director for Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Gabriel Grau, highlighted that the United States supports Sri Lanka's efforts towards expediting exports and improving efficiency for businesses and government agencies. Gabriel added that the United States is committed to initiatives such as Sri Lanka's Trade National Single Window System or TNSWS, which makes trade more transparent and predictable, easing business challenges.
A workshop for 94 key Trade National Single Window System project stakeholders was recently organized by the Department of Trade and Investment Policy of the Ministry of Finance, Economic Stabilization and National Policies in collaboration with the USAID. Through the United States Agency for International Development, the United States is facilitating the implementation of Sri Lanka's Trade National Single Window System or TNSWS. Aimed at modernizing the country's trade facilitation infrastructure, the TNSWS will streamline the collection of information required for trade, leading to increased transparency and efficiency, reduced costs and more potential revenue. The recent workshop enhanced participants' understanding of how the single window system works and its benefits, and also encouraged collaboration and sustainability in Sri Lanka's TNSWS implementation. USAID Mission Director for Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Gabriel Grau, highlighted that being a long-term partner and Sri Lanka's largest export market, the United States supports efforts to boost exports and improve efficiency for business and government agencies. Gabriel went on to say that the United States is committed to initiatives like the TNSWS, which will make trade more transparent and predictable, easing business challenges. Meanwhile, Secretary to the Ministry of Finance Mahinda Siriwardana noted that establishing a Trade National Single Window System is crucial as Sri Lanka recovers from an unprecedented economic crisis. He further added that TNSWS will increase Sri Lanka's trade competitiveness and support export growth, leading to sustained economic stability. As part of the World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement, Sri Lanka signed in 2017, implementation of a TNSWS is required, while its implementation received cabinet approval in 2022.
Now in other business news, the Colombo Stock Exchange rose today, snapping a two-day losing run aided by gains in financials and consumer staple stocks. The CSE All-Share Price Index rose 0.22% to 11,811.50 points after losing 1.4% in the previous two sessions. Similarly, S&P Sri Lanka 20 also ended positively 0.3% at 3,448.35 points. Financial sector rose 1.3%, while consumer staples ended 1.1% higher. LLC Finance and Brown's Investment were the biggest boosts on the index, rising 5.9% and 5.8% respectively. Trading volume rose to 33.6 million shares from 19 million shares in the previous session. The equity market's turnover rose to 801.2 million from 483.3 million rupees in the previous session. Foreign investors were net sellers in the market, selling stocks worth 68.5 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 760.7 million rupees. Up next is Udishan Jonas from Capital Alliance Limited with some thoughts on the current status of the economy in our next segment, Economic Outlook.
At today's Treasury bill auction, the 3-month Treasury bill rates fell by 16 basis points to 9.9%, while the 12-month Treasury bill rates fell by 10 basis points to 10.2%. The reduction in rates indicate that more interest is tilting towards the short end of the yield curve, while investors are staying away from the long end curve in anticipation of uncertainty related to the elections, as well as the central bank raising a large amount of bonds compared to the maturities of the Treasury bonds coming in. We see the central bank looking at cutting rates further as inflation is expected to fall below the 2% mark on average, as electricity tariffs are expected to be reduced by roughly about 30%. From an external debt restructuring perspective, with the second round of ISP talks coming to a conclusion, the base case scenario shows that the international sovereign bonds principal will be cut by 28%, whereas the coupons will be reduced by roughly about a 25% rate, and the principal repayment will be extended by 5 years. This will mean that overall the NPV reduction will be close to between 40 to 45% on an overall perspective. We expect this progress to be about 2 months from today, and with the completion, we expect an improvement in the Sri Lanka's foreign credit ratings.
That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.